move on to public comments. If anybody would like to address the board, if an item is not elsewhere on the agenda, it's time to do so. Item number 6, adoption of agenda. We have board order 6A1. Do we need a motion in a second?
Mr. President, I'll move to adopt the agenda, 6A1.
Mr. President, I'll second the motion.
We have a motion by Director Miller and a second by Director Paris. If there's no further comments, or, no, we do have to have a roll call.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Jay Tremblay,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried, so we'll move on to the Finance Committee, but I want to just take a second and, we have, as I think most everybody, I think everybody knows, we have a new board member, and again, Jay, welcome, and I'm glad everything's, working out, and takes a little bit to figure it all out, but
It's a lot more involved than you realize to begin with.
definitely, and,
Mama.
the long word's gonna hold me a lot more sense here.
Paper.
And there's some tours you need to take, and I think you'll be, find this very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll move on to the Finance Committee, and
Oh, consent calendar.
you never let me get by, do you? Thank goodness, right there.
Mr. President.
We have a consent calendar, it's minutes of the regular, okay,
I move approval of Board Order 7A1, the consent calendar of the minutes.
okay, we have a motion
Second.
in a second. If there's no further questions, which I don't think there will be, Madam Secretary?
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Jay Tremblay,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Okay, now we'll move on to, Finance Committee, and Director, Dias is chairman of that committee, so we'll turn it over to, Director Dias.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met a week ago tonight, and we were supposed to discuss item 8A1, but I believe that was related to issuing bonds for the Metropolitan Water District, but that was delayed to a later meeting, but I don't recall the date. And we also discussed item 8A2, consideration and possible action to accept and file the check register list for the period of April 24th, 2025 through May 14th, 2025. And I believe our General Manager Knudsen will review some of these for us tonight.
And,
All right.
yeah,
Thank you.
and we do have, Michael Ehrenberg from, Wells Fargo, and Matt, would you like to
Yeah,
make that introduction?
thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Director Dias. But we'd like to go back to item 8A1, which is an update on the status of utilizing AVAC's existing JPA to issue bonds for the High Desert Water Bank project on behalf of Metropolitan Water District. And I think you all know Michael Engelbrecht. He's with Wells Fargo Corporate and Investment Banking. And he was planning to be here tonight because we were going to take action. So he decided to come anyways and give a status update on where Metropolitan is at with this project. So,
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Our association goes back many years, does it not?
Well, I was telling, I think it was Teresa, that I started coming up here in 2004.
Oh, man.
So it's been a minute.
20 years.
But it's been fantastic. Director Paris, I can say hi. Thank you for the opportunity. Again, my name is Michael Engelbrecht. I'm with Wells Fargo and have been since 2004. It's been my pleasure to be of assistance to the agency for 21 years, and I have enjoyed every moment of it. As General Manager Knudsen had mentioned, the process of this transaction started probably 2 years ago, I want to say. And you would know this better than I, but Metropolitan is a big organization, lots of cats to herd, lots of simultaneously moving parts and pieces. And so that's taken some time. And the reason that we're not here today to ask for authorization and approval on the documents is that they were a little bit slow getting your team and Jim Markman, the documents for their review. And so we hit the pause button because that's one of our concerns, is that your staff has had ample opportunity to review the documents. Those documents were finally distributed probably a week ago. And so the plan is that I will be back next Thursday for the Finance Committee meeting to walk through kind of financing and the documents that need to be approved. And if the Finance Committee so pleases, they would recommend to your board, I think it's on the 10th. I get that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, I will not be in the country. I'm going out of town. So I can't be here, but I wanted to be here today to introduce myself to someone I have not met. And when you think about, just as a reminder, the tenets of this process, the things that were of uber importance to the board and the agency, is that the integrity of the high desert water banking agreement remained untouched. And so that spirit lives on. And then Metropolitan, by issuing bonds through the Avek Financing Authority, was advantageous to them as your financial partner. And they've increased the investments to $211 million. There's a longer term. And instead of paying cash, the bonds will be issued to provide those funds that will sit with the trustee, and payments will be made directly from Metropolitan. There is no financial obligation to the agency. And in fact, at Matt and Jim Markman's insistence, in the agreement, there's an assignment agreement. So when Metropolitan makes the payments to Avek on behalf of the bonds, Avek has assigned all those to the bond trustees, so money never comes to Avek, which is important because it also includes an indemnity, a very broad indemnity feature. I think it's section 5 of the assignment agreement, if you're interested in looking at it, that there's no risk, no obligation, no limit to what you can protect yourself and recover the fees. And so Jim Markman has done an excellent job of reviewing that. And so those tenets, which you will see, are very clear, and they're upfront and they're not hidden. And that was of great importance. And so the next time that I'll be here will be next Thursday at the Finance Committee meeting. We'll walk through those documents, asking for approval. And then in 2 weeks, the board, the Avek board, and then the Avek JPA, the financing JPA, will need to approve the resolutions and accompanying documents. There's a lot there. It's probably a really big stack, but it really operates the way that it's supposed to. And just like everything else Metropolitan does, it's top-notch, top shelf. And so they've got some really good people working. And it's been a pleasure working with your staff and with your with agency counsel, because they've been helpful and patient, understanding. I think I talk to Matt every week, but we're getting very, very close. If it pleases the Finance Committee next week, and then you as the agency board and the JPA financing board in 2 weeks, the bonds are being scheduled to be sold the week of June 23rd, and then they'll close 2 weeks later. And then that money sits with the trustee, and so as you get reimbursed from Metropolitan, that money's already there.
Where will those be sold at?
Right now, we're looking at doing it in our New York office.
And can you explain the process? What happens that day?
Yeah, it's very interesting. The last time we sold bonds for the agency was 2017. We have an offering document, which you'll get the pleasure of seeing. It's pretty thick. You'll see very limited references to Avek. It's all about Metropolitan, because the investors just want to know who's going to pay the bills, and it's all Metropolitan. So when we send that out, we go into the day we go into the market, we actually open up what we call an order period, and we list the maturities, and investors put their orders in. And there's a screen, you can watch them pile up. Some maturities will have more investors than others. The maturities that have a lot of investor interest will lower the interest rate, as you would expect. And then when we've done that process, we make a verbal obligation to purchase the bonds at the agreed price. So it's not like a stock offer. If we're going to sell $200 million worth of bonds, we're selling 200 million worth of bonds. It's not like a stock where if you only get 100 million of orders, that's all you sell. And so we'll make that obligation. We sign a purchase agreement with Metropolitan because they're the obligor. Then we, 2 weeks later, we close and the money changes hands. Now, if the interest rates for the market moves away during that time period, that's our risk as Wells Fargo, and that's why they pay us to kind of be the middleman here and orchestrate the sale. And I say this.
So Wells Fargo will end up, buying on somebody else's behalf, or?
Yeah, we buy them all, knowing that we're lining up investors that 2 weeks later, when the money changes, they will.
Well, when the
we don't
investors
own anything.
are lined up, do they call in, or is it done electronically? How is it?
It used to be more fun when it was all on the phone, but now it's all on a Bloomberg terminal. These messages come in. And so it's a little bit different. Yes, sir.
So what if the investors only bid on $180 million? Wells Fargo still take the whole 200?
We take the whole 200.
And then do you go out?
We try to work those off. And when you think about why an investor wouldn't buy the bonds, because the interest rate is too low. So we take that risk. If the rates continue to go up, that comes out of our pocket.
So would Wells Fargo eventually hold on to 20 million for a while and then put them back out, or how would that work?
That's a really good question. So on our trading desk, they try to keep inventory limited to like 90 days, because at that point you're just accruing losses. And eventually, if the market doesn't get better, we tend to sell them at a loss, but that comes out of our pocket. Yeah, but that day we commit, those prices are low.
Could you, what's the worst thing that could happen on the sale or JVAC or the Metropolitan Water District?
Yeah, so the worst that could happen, and sometimes this does, you think you're going into the market and you're ready to price the bonds, but some news or some event and the markets really kind of retract, right? We saw that 9/11 is a good market shutdown. That was a dead stop. More recently, we were in the market with a state of California transaction, 900 million, I think it was. And there were, it was the tariff tweets, tariffs are on, tariffs are off, tariffs are back on, and the market was whipsawed. And so we said, you know what, we're not going to sell bonds today, we're going to try it. And so we came back in the next day because uncertainty, investors say, well, I'm going to hold my money because I don't know what's going to happen. And so we've seen that. And so a lot of times we think we're going to price on one day, but sometimes we'll go a day early because the market.
We've had two circumstances where basically, people guaranteed there was no risk to the agency, and one were being sued, and another possibility of being sued, and I've heard both of those presentations. So I just hope there's nothing that comes back that we weren't aware of.
Well, what's interesting about that is, with that as a backdrop, Matt and Jim Markman have worked very hard and diligently to review those documents, right? So when you get the draft documents, and they have them now, but when you get it for your finance committee, on the cover, you're going to see Avek Financing Authority, and then there's a line here that says the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. Anybody reading that will fully understand that that money is not yours. And it's not your obligation. You're merely the JPA, which is very common in our market. So common that there is an indemnity factor that indemnifies the agency to anything, any financial obligation, anything to do with the bonds whatsoever, continuing disclosure, etc. It's right there in the assignment.
Okay, does the board have any more questions or comments?
Actually, George, I think that was a good question of yours, and Tilden and Jim, have you reviewed the documents yet?
I've reviewed several drafts of all the documents.
Great. And are there any traps that you potentially see? Like, could we ever have to defend ourselves, an attorney fee clause or anything like that in there?
I don't see that. I think first of all, there's a one-page agenda. It's the broadest one I've ever seen, but we've also added some language in the resolutions and here and there to make it clear that even if some changes are made after you adopt the resolution, they can't make a change that exposes you to any monetary payments or exposure.
So
it's as tight as I've ever seen it.
Yeah, going off of what George says, there has been 2 incidents where we been told that exact same thing, and then we find ourselves in lawsuits. So is it your belief that if that happened to us, we have a tight enough indemnity agreement to protect the agency?
Good questions. Good question. I hope in about 5 or 10 years, somebody's saying, I do not recall. I do not recall.
Well, it's in writing.
5 or 10 years, I'll say, damn it, George told us to vote on it.
Okay. Michael, do you have anything? Let's see, any other directors have questions? Okay, Michael, do you have anything further?
I appreciate that. I'll be here for the Finance Committee meeting next Thursday, and I appreciate any questions you have before or after that. Matt knows how to track them.
Yeah, thank you. And anything we've done with you in the past, you've never had a problem with it.
I feel the pressure already. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you much.
I have one final question. These are tax exempt?
Correct.
State and local tax exempt bonds, not,
Double exempt.
explain that.
So it's the federal income tax exemption and the state income tax exemption.
So there's no tax, you have both exemptions on the?
Both. Yeah, just like all municipal tax exempt bonds in California, this is no different.
So since we aren't issuing them, can George buy some of these bonds?
Absolutely. But the interest rates are going to be so low.
We can have a talk about that with George.
You may want to recuse yourself.
You can actually buy bonds if they're offered on the general market.
And they are. It's an open market.
I knew he didn't want to ask that question, so I asked him.
One thing in years and years past, I think we had a copy of a bond right there. The AVEC had it framed. You remember that, Keith?
Yes, I do, and I don't know what happened to it.
They used to print them.
Yeah.
They don't. They've
Okay.
taken all the fun out.
Okay.
I think John has it in his office,
If that's a bearer bond, you may want to get
the old one.
Okay. Okay, thank you much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
And this
Appreciate
is
it.
informational. There was no action on this item at this time. So we'll move to item 8. Go back to you, Keith.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Consideration and possible action to accept and file the check register list for the period of April 24th, 2025 through May 14th, 2025. And Matt, are you going to review these with us?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Director Dias. So begin on page 11 of your board packet is our check run for this period. So I'll hit a couple of the highlights. We went through this in detail with the Finance Committee last week. Item number 1 is our monthly fixed payment to Department of Water Resources based on our statement of charges, just over $1.5 million. You'll see the credit card expenses. We went through that in detail. President Lane reviewed mine and Holly's credit card expenses, and I reviewed all the other ones. On page 12 of your packet, item 43, and then item 44 on the following page, are our annual principal and interest payment for the 2 outstanding bonds that agency has. The 2017 Krebs bonds and the 2016 refunding bonds. So it's just over $7 million between the 2 issues. And again, this is our annual principal and interest payment that we make once a year. And then there's another payment made where it's interest only. Item 49 is a progress payment for the contractor working on the Leona Valley Tank Rehab Project. It's about $236,000. That project is wrapping up. Item 56 is a payment to Pure Technologies. It's about $550,000. And this is associated with the West Feeder assessment or inspection. If you remember, the board approved this several months ago. They finally completed all their field work, and we're just waiting for the final report to show what the results are. So probably have that within the next month or so. Item 59 is our payment to the Antelope Valley Water Master for 875 acre feet of imported water return flows that AVAC gets per the judgment. And we paid $9.50 per acre foot. So that payment is about $8,300 to the water master. I'm gonna fast forward to page 16. These two payments are made associated with the High Desert Water Bank Capital Program, and both of these payments are reimbursed by Metropolitan Water District. One is a progress payment for Nicholas Construction to install some stop logs for DWR requirements, and Justin has a photo later to show that work. That's about 130,000. And then next check is 1403. That's a progress payment to Stantec for design and inspection services on the recovery well package. That's about 75,000. And those are the highlights I wanted to mention. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
I just want to ask a question that I did ask in Finance Committee, but I thought it was interesting because I didn't know the answer. The return flows, every agency that has return flows pays that $9.50 per acre foot for return flows.
Correct.
So that's makes up a substantial amount of the water master budget.
Yep.
So
Yeah, everybody pays their fixed payment at the beginning of the year. That's based on production rights.
Production rights, yeah.
And then in May or March, April, I guess it is, time frame, everybody pays their variable rate, which takes into account imported water return flows, any overproduction, the federal rights, water, etc. So that's what we're paying here.
What did you say about the federal water?
There's a federal reserve right. The feds received, I can't remember what the quantity was. I want to say is 7,000 acre feet or so. And any water that they don't use, the remaining balance gets divvied up amongst the public water suppliers, but they have to pay the assessment on that.
Who are we talking about this in the Antelope Valley or?
Yeah.
What?
For Edwards Air Force Base. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, those assessments are $9.50 an acre foot.
Yeah, per acre foot for both the fixed and the variable.
We're gonna be able to get those down anytime soon, or?
Oh no, that's a question probably for Pete. He's the administrator.
Let's work on getting those down.
Gary, we're working on not raising them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Well, is there an accounting on that? How that's spent?
For the water master?
Yes.
Yeah, they have an adopted budget and they review the monthly invoices every month.
Probably the board should see that, okay, at some point.
Yeah, we could show that to this board. And the advisory committee also does a good job of being the oversight of those monies.
And that's basically everything we're doing, with our finance, whatever bills we're paying. We'd ask for that for the things that are done, the water bank, whatever. We need not just the total, we need how it's spent.
Yeah.
And Mr. President, just to let you know, since Therese has taken over as our financial officer and Peter's now our administrator, the Water Master Board gets updated probably every couple of months on what's going on with our budget. And tomorrow, if you'd like, is our audit, and we expect to have an outstanding audit with a lot of rave reviews of our financial officer, Teresa. So you might stay tuned for that. Thank you, Teresa. And our administrator, Peter, too. Don't forget Peter. Yeah. So,
Okay.
so you might want to listen in on our meeting and hear our audit.
Good information, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Matt.
All right. Anything else? That's all I have.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion, we approve item 8A2. This is Keith.
We have a motion, Director Dias. Do we have a second?
Mr. President, I'll second that motion.
We have a second. Okay, from Director Paris. If there's no further questions or comments, Madam Secretary?
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Jake Tremblay,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, now we'll move along to item 8A3, consideration and possible action to accept and file the treasurer's report for the month ending April 30th, 2025. And I believe our finance manager Yates will make a presentation.
Thank you, Director Dias. Good evening, directors. This is the treasurer's report for April. And average yield to maturity for the total portfolio for April was 4.391%, which was down 0.053% from March. Average days to maturity for the total portfolio was 238 days, or approximately 8 months. And total cash and investments at April 30th was 174.1 million, which was up 13.7 million from the prior month, and that was due to the property taxes that were received in April. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
It's pretty clear and to follow, and I think you're doing a good job, so.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments for the board?
And I know-
I'll move approval.
We have a motion from Director Mercy. Leave a second.
I'll second.
Director Miller, Madam Secretary?
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Jay Tremblay,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Yeah, thank you. Teresa, just, one question. When you give that fiscal report, would it be possible to do that in a column? So you could stand out just a little easier than what it does now?
For which one?
Well, you're giving the interest rates and the information you're giving into the fiscal report impact.
Okay, so like summarize what I'm talking about on,
But just-
on the page?
Yeah, I mean, you
Okay.
don't, just in a column, I just,
Okay.
interest rate, and you have to read through it to get it, but
Okay,
if it, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but
okay,
it would stand out, or
okay, I'll give it a shot.
if it doesn't work out, it doesn't, but you might just look at it and see if it does.
Okay,
Thanks, Teresa.
And now we'll move along to item 8A4, consideration and possible action to approve a purchase order with Brax Process and Pump Equipment for the purchase of one 33 horsepower submersible pump in the not to exceed amount of $57,372.40. And I believe our operations manager, John Bozigian, will provide a little more detail on this project.
Oh, thank you, Director Dias. I think we have a slide up there, Holly. Okay, when you come up the driveway, you notice to your right, those two big retention basins. Those are wastewater recovery. Are you laughing at me, Rob?
You tell it like a story. It's great.
John's story, Uncle John's story.
Yeah, I love it.
So it makes it easier to swallow the now.
I wasn't laughing at you. I was enjoying the
I appreciate
presentation.
So when we backwash, all the water we backwash with goes into those ponds. We have to have a way to get it out of those ponds back into the plant because we recycle everything. So we have these submersible pumps. They're huge pumps, 33 horsepower, and they will run the water back up to the headworks of the plant to be retreated. If we can't remove that water, we can't backwash. If we can't backwash, we can't run the plant. That's why they're so important. So these pumps were installed in 2010. They've given us great service. We've replaced a couple over the years. This is one of the original ones. And they're not on the shelf pumps. You have to put out bids, and there's about 15 or 16 week lead time to get these pumps. So we called three of our manufacturers, Brax Pump and Equipment, Man, SoCal, and PowerFlow Products. They supply these type of pumps. And Pumpman and Brax were pretty close on their pricing. PowerFlow was way out of line. But we did get a good quote from Brax. We'd like to go with that. And just so you have a kind of a feeling of the size of these pumps, I'll the next slide. Okay, so that's our superintendent of Quartz Hill, Josh Ball. He's taller than he looks in that picture. He's about 6'5", and I'm joking. That didn't go over as well as I hoped. But they're huge pumps. And anyway, it's good to have a spare. so that if something goes down middle of summer, we throw the spare in, we're good to go. We did take the old pump to try and get it rebuilt, but it looks like, as with anything, they don't support it anymore. They don't make spare parts for it. And so unfortunately, we have to do a full replacement. So with that being said, we would ask the board to approve $57,372.40 to Brax Pump and Equipment for one of these pumps.
Just one question, why wouldn't we buy two at this time or one to, this is the spare,
Yeah, there's 4 total that
Right.
are always in use.
right?
This is a spare. That one on the screen is a spare we already have. So we're gonna get a second spare.
So this is the second
This will be
spare.
the second spare.
So when one goes out, we have a backup.
Yeah, so you'd be a great operator. So you look at things that way. That's good.
I think it's you looking at our future, so we appreciate that.
We can never have failure, so that's why we always have plenty of spare parts.
So I had a question, John. How come we can't get spare parts?
You can't get spare parts for the original pumps. ABS that makes these pumps does not support it anymore. That's purposeful because they don't want to sell you parts after 15 years. They want to sell you a new pump. So we can get spare parts for the pumps we're buying, and we are going to buy a set of parts so we can rebuild one of these pumps. But the originals are done. Yeah.
Okay, is there any further comments or questions? If not, a motion would be in order.
Mr. President, I move approval of Board Order 8A4.
Motion by Director Parrish,
I'll second.
second by Director Miller. Madam Secretary?
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Yes.
Jay Tremblay,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, yeah, motion carried. Yeah, thank you much, John.
I think.
Thanks,
Great
John.
job, John.
And that concludes the Finance Committee report, Mr. President.
Yeah, thank you, Director Dias. That'll bring us on to now item number B, Personnel and Legal Committee, and Audrey, Director Miller is chairman of that committee.
Yes, Mr. President, we met, and the Personnel, Legal, and JPIA committee met, and we spoke on the consideration and possible action for the COLA adjustment. So it's a happy sort of item that we have to talk about, and I'll turn it over to Matt.
All right, thank you, Director Miller. So as Director Miller mentioned, the Personnel Committee met last week. On page 41 of your agenda packet, there's a brief staff report. But as you know, each year, historically, the agency has looked at the April CPI index and looked at what the change in percentage has been over the previous 12 months. And you can see that chart on the screen there. We always, like I mentioned, look at April. You can see the year-over-year percent change. And the current CPI index is a 2.9 increase over last year. So we do this by looking at the index, and then we apply that to all of the salaries for the employees throughout the agencies. And the goal there is to ensure that the salaries keep up with the market. Every 5+ years, we typically go through and do an agency-wide salary survey. Takes a lot of effort, time, and looking at everybody's job description and duties and responsibilities, and comparing that to what the water industry market is. So typically, as long as you're doing the annual COLA adjustment, you should be keeping pace with what other agencies are doing with their salaries. The goal here is for employee retention and ensure nobody leaves the agency and jumps ship for a couple bucks to another agency. So it's this process has served the agency well, and the Personnel Committee is recommending that we go ahead and approve the 2.9% COLA for this year. And this would be effective July 1st.
Right, and I'll just say, we kept to a pretty good pattern of how we decided in the committee. of what we would do with that. And it's been trending that we stay with that April month to give the whatever that amount is, like it's 2.9 for April this year. So we've only varied a couple times on our, in the last few years with that. And we appreciate our staff and our employees and would like to continue to use that basis for determining the COLA. And I would like to move approval of this item.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll let Gary second. He beat me.
Director Van Dam, the second. Is there any further questions or comments from the board? If not, Madam Secretary?
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Yes.
Jay Tremblay,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, the motion carried. Thank you, good job.
All right, thank you.
Does that conclude your report?
That concludes the report.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. We'll move on to item number C, the Water Master Committee. And Director Parrish is chairman of that committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll have Matt do this presentation for us.
All right, thank you, Director Paris. So on page 43 of your packet is a staff report that Angel helped put together. And attached to that staff report is the actual agenda for tomorrow's Water Master meeting. And this is our time as one of the representatives on the Water Master board for this board to give direction to Director Paris for some of the upcoming action items. So I'm going to hit the highlights, beginning with the annual audit. Director Paris mentioned this earlier, but tomorrow the Water Master is going to hear presentation from the audit firm that prepared the audit, and happy to report that it's a clean audit or a clean opinion from the audit firm. It's highest level of assurance that can be given on financial statements, and this represents all materials in accordance with the government auditing American standards, the GAAP. So our recommendation to our representative is to accept and file the audit report. And a lot of the kudos for a clean audit for the Water Master goes to Teresa Yates. She does a good job keeping everything in track and ensuring that we have a clean audit. Any
And
questions?
Matt, I only want to add to that is I did get to speak with our auditor today. They have to talk to somebody on the board, usually the chairman, about the audit and ask a lot of questions. But Jonathan, our auditor, was incredibly complimentary of the job that Teresa has done for us. So I think that goes a long ways in why we're looking so good now. So Teresa, thank you very much.
Yeah, Matt, do we need a board order or anything? It's just all information?
We don't. It's just all informational right now, as long as you're agreeing with my recommendation.
So if anybody has different opinion, we need to hear them.
Yeah, speak up if you don't agree with the recommendation. They're highlighted. Okay, so next item is, the item that just never goes away. It's talking about the Water Master Administrator. So the Water Master decided that they would go out with a new request for proposal process, or go through a process of selecting a permanent administrator. And they asked for some options to be brought back and discussed with the board. And there's going to be two options presented tomorrow, kind of a standard two-phase approach where we go through and do a request for qualifications followed by a request for proposal. Obviously, it's going to take more time, staff time, effort to go through that. And the alternative is to do a fast track approach where you skip the RFQ process and go straight to RFP, or request for proposal. I think the advisory committee, they approved to go the fast track. So skip the RFQ process and go straight to RFP. That was approved 11-0 by the advisory committee. So you can see down at the bottom, my recommendation to the AVAC rep is to go with the fast track approach. Any questions on that? Hearing none?
All pretty, looks like it's all redundant. It looks like we're just repeating what we tried to do some time ago.
Yeah, we've repeated it numerous times.
Disappointing.
Yeah. Next item of concern is formation of an ad hoc committee for the carryover storage agreement process. There's been a lot of talk amongst the various parties and the board and the advisory committee on this issue of developing a storage or a carryover storage agreement that's required in the judgment and the rules and regs. So at the last board meeting, I think there was a recommendation to form an ad hoc committee that would be made up of Carolina Hernandez, who represents District 40, and Brandon Calandri, who represents he's one half of the landowner rep seats. And then also one advisory committee representative, either Dennis Lamro or somebody that he designates.
Could you explain a little bit more what this will accomplish?
I think,
Matt, do you want me to jump in here?
yeah.
Yeah. So this was my recommendation, George, that we form an ad hoc committee. And I'm looking at within our and the reason for that is this is I wouldn't say controversial, but a really important decision. It's going to take a lot of time. And I thought if the whole board was making these recommendations, we'd be burning a lot of meeting time. And so I thought we should choose somebody that was very well respected in the advisory committee, which was Dennis, who's the chair, or a designee. Brandon Calandri is one of the landowners with a large amount of carryover water and production water. And then Carolina from the county, District 40, again, a big public water supplier that has a lot of carryover water. I thought make an ad hoc committee would make their deliberations more available to the public and would so they could take more time on it, then bring back recommendations to the Water Master Board, where we will still have public meetings, but hopefully they come back with 2 or 3 recommendations that we can focus on and save a lot of meeting time for the entire Water Master Board and try to streamline the process a little bit.
Thank you. It sounds like a good idea.
Thank you.
I had a question. Did the advisory committee board look at this?
They did.
Julie, do you recall? And?
Things like a shot at being a part of the committee, maybe having an advisory committee meeting to be able to put information to Brandon and Carolina.
Yeah,
That was
yeah, not a problem if that's brought up tomorrow. I talked to our attorney today about it. Although it would not be covered under the Brown Act, he's going to recommend that we do the meetings like it is. And if the ad hoc committee and advisory committee want to do a meeting on their own, I think that'd be great. So. And they voted 11-0 to go forward with this. Is that right? Okay.
Well, actually, they voted 7 yes, 4 abstained.
Okay, good. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So you think with the more input, we would solve that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, and you can see the staff recommendation there is just, listen to the advisory committee concerns before proceeding.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Julie.
And lastly, we have some transfers. You can see them all listed there. All of these are temporary or one-time transfers, not permanent production right transfers. So transfer of carryover water. First one is from the Gene Nebeker estate to this Treeland Farms, 228 acre feet. Advisory committee had they approved this, but they had some recommendations regarding the application, being that it's a new owner that bought I think it was called Long Valley. That was a seller, yeah. Long Valley was a seller. Long Valley Road, there it is right there. So that seems reasonable. And I don't know what Craig Parton's opinion is on this, but we'll hear that tomorrow. And then the next two are from the Godey family to Robertson Ready Mix, each 150 acre feet of carryover water. The advisory committee recommends approval of these two applications. Very little comment from the advisory committee. And you can see down at the bottom, staff recommendation is to approve these. None of these transfers have any impact on AVEC's operation or water banks. Any questions on those? No? All right, and that's all we had on the water master, unless you had any questions.
Hey, if the committee is satisfied with the direction we have, if not, we're down to here right now.
Sure. Or, I'm
Judy-
sorry,
Judy,
Mr. President.
Yeah, could you come up, please?
I'd like to be able to sleep tonight. AVEC is going to go out with an RFP? Is that correct?
Well, it's not AVEC.
What is the question?
You're going to submit an RFP.
I don't think we decided yet, but are you recommending that we do?
I am begging continually. So we are asking that AVEC will continue as our administrator and submit an RFP. Because that's been a big sticking point for a couple of folks.
Well, I think we'll have to talk about that. Matt, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I think we need to talk about it as a board or as an agency, and we need to first see what the RFP says in it, what the requirements are, and what the water master is looking for, and then we make a decision as an agency if it's in our best interest to propose.
Because we have tried in the past.
Well, okay.
Actually, I can answer that. We did not put in a request for proposal last time. That's kind of what happened is the Water Master Board could not come to a consensus on any of those who had put in the board. So because when our past administrator kind of resigned abruptly and did not put in a request to continue for reasons.
Did we not do that once, Rob?
And we have, I don't think we've ever put in a request for.
AVEC has never put in a actual proposal, a formal proposal.
Because what,
But we've had bids in the past for administrator.
The
well,
water master has.
Water master.
Yeah, water masters received bids from numerous firms in the past.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think Julie's question is, she wants a commitment from AVEC that we're going to submit a proposal.
and my recommendation would be exactly what Matt said. We need to wait to see what the request for proposal is. I think we probably have a good idea what that might be. And that if the board at that point believes it's in our community's best interest, because we're all public servants, to do so, we just need to have consensus among the board to do that. So you're a little bit early, but you are enthusiastic and we appreciate that.
Okay.
I'll be back.
You know, you will.
Yeah, thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Julie.
Mr. President,
Mr. President, Drew had a question.
I have
Yeah, Drew?
a question on that process, just to clarify, because I know last time it got a little confusing. So, as we're acting as the administrator now, they put out an RFP. If we put one in, others put them in, and there is not a consensus on the board or on the Water Master Board, we remain the administrator until there's a consensus
We would.
or otherwise,
Yeah.
correct?
My understanding of how it would work is we would, with the board's agreement, because our deal with the water master now is what type of notice do we have to give them? You know,
It's like 60 days or
Yeah.
something.
so we have basically an MOU that the water master by consensus agreed to, that we would be the temporary administrator pending the appointment of a permanent administrator. So the last time we went out for requests for proposals, we did not put one in. That seems to be a concern of some of the members of the water master group, that we should put in a request, and if we do, then they would respond to it. Now, if we put in for one and others do, and there's no consensus, then we would continue operating under our MOU until there was consensus, or until a party, whoever it would be, wanted to take that to the court and get the court to rule on who should be the administrator. That's my understanding of where this would be now from our discussions. Is that?
Yep.
Good explanation.
Thank you.
Director Miller?
There's no expiration in that MOU, is there?
No, there's no set term.
The water master board could give us the same notice that we could give them. So if the water master board had a consensus that they no longer wanted Avek to be the administrator, then they would give us that notice, and then they would do what they wanted to do.
But that would have to be a 5-0 vote.
Yes.
Just clarify.
Yeah.
Director Mercy, did you have a comment?
Nope, that was it. I just wanted
Okay.
to clarify that point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anything further? If not, we're gonna move on.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to item number D, High Desert Water Bank. And Director Dias is chairman of that committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The High Desert Water Bank Committee met last week, and the first item we discussed was the monthly update on the High Desert Water Bank project. And I believe that our engineering manager, Justin Lovesay, will review this with the full board tonight.
Yeah, Justin, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Dias. Good evening, President Lane and members of the board. We've got our standard monthly update. I'll hit a couple of things for our new director, Director Tremblay here, but otherwise pretty standard update here. Starting off with our executive summary, the High Desert Water Bank goals are to develop a reliable state water project supply, improve the reliability, recharge up to 70,000 acre feet per year, recover 70,000 acre feet per year with direct pump back to the California Aqueduct State Water Project, and a total storage goal of 280,000 acre feet within the project. At the time of storage, we deduct a one-time 10% loss or leave behind to account for evaporation, migration, et cetera. We have an agreement with Metropolitan Water District, and I've listed some of the key agreement principles here. The agreement term is through 2037 with an option for Metropolitan to extend that by 20 years. Metropolitan has agreed to pay all capital costs of the project, as well as all operation, maintenance, replacement, and AVEX management costs for the project. In return for that investment, they get first priority right to all the banking capacity in the project, as well as the recovery capacity up to 70,000 acre feet. AVEC agrees to own and operate the project. In return, we receive a second priority right to the banking and recovery capacity in the project as well. At the time water is returned to Metropolitan, Metropolitan pays us $100 per acre foot for each acre foot of water returned. And that's escalated with CPI. That current rate is about $120 per acre foot. And with the amount that we've banked in the project to date, we've got about $5.4 million worth of value stored in that High Desert Water Bank at the moment. Currently, we are not recharging at the project. Metropolitan Water District has provided written confirmation to us that they do not plan to store water at the High Desert Water Bank in 2025. So we remain at a total stored of 50,475 acre feet. After deducting a one-time 10% loss, there's a recoverable balance of 45,116 acre feet for Metropolitan's benefit. And AVEC has stored just over 7,000 in the bank, and we've got about 6,300 acre feet available to recover as of today. Some recent progress on the engineering and fieldwork for the project.
Justin,
Yes, sir.
could AVAC continue to recharge in that bank?
We can. Yeah, with Metropolitan's notice that they do not plan to bank, AVEC has our second priority right active at the
And
moment.
that water would be to the benefit of AVAC,
It would be, yeah.
once we can get
Yeah.
it someplace.
Yeah, correct.
And we would just have to pay our proportionate share of the O&M cost for that year.
As far as recent activity on the project, Stantec, who's the engineer for the project, and Joe Long is here tonight. They're working on progressing the on-site electrical design from 60% to 90%. They're continuing via their subcontractor Montgomery and Associates, and I saw earlier Tim Leo is on the phone as well. But Montgomery and Associates is continuing their oversight of the well drilling contractor in the field. And then we're working together with Stantec and Southern California Edison to update the substation site plan for the ultimate substation that needs to be on the High Desert Water Bank property. Is there anything you'd like to add, Joe? All right. Sounds good. Moving into budget, this table hasn't changed much since the last time we saw this. But for Director Tremblay's benefit, the way this table operates is we've got each phase of the project shown in the leftmost column. How much of the budget, the $211 million project budget that's been allocated to each of those categories. The next middle column there is the contracts that have been approved to date, the totals of those, as well as the percent that represents as far as what's been committed of the budgeted amount. The last two columns are the payout to date. So that second from the right column updates as we make payments to our contractors and engineers, consultants. And then the far right column is how much we have available for each of those categories. See, if you look at this, we've got about $104 million remaining available in the budget. We've paid out $102 million roughly to date. So percent committed, pretty much all the engineering and design work has already been approved and is being worked on. We still have some miscellaneous items related to construction, as well as the actual construction contracts that are still remaining to be bid and contracts approved. So looking pretty good as we stand right now as far as overall budget goes. This breaks down each of those approved contracts in a little bit more detail. So we've got the vendor or the contractor on the far left, description of the project. Next to that, what the contract was awarded, if there's been a change order, what the total contract is, how much we've paid out to date. And then the last two columns are the percent that we've paid versus the percentage of work that's been completed. You'll notice on there, there's two projects that are highlighted in blue. Those are new to this table. The second from the bottom is the stop log modification project that Matt mentioned earlier as payment that was made to Nicholas Construction on the checklist. So that's a $196,500 contract. We paid about $130,000 of that on that first payment that you saw. So that represents about 70% of the work that's been completed. We've paid about 66%, accounting for the retention that we withhold from every construction contract. And then the very bottom one on there is our environmental consultant. This has to do with the additional environmental work needed to be done for Metropolitan's federal grant money. So that's underway, about $15,000 worth of work there for them to do some additional studies and produce a technical memo that can be sent to the federal government or the Bureau of Reclamation. So that's underway. No payments have been made towards that contract as of yet.
No, that's for additional work. That's for, hadn't we already done that, environmental work?
We did all the environmental work required to be compliant with CEQA, California state environmental requirements, but because this is federal money that they're getting, we have to do additional work to be compliant with the federal requirements of the project.
And I guess I know the answer, but you can't use what's been done for the state.
Cannot. No.
Anyway, that seems like it is a waste right there.
Yeah.
We've already done it to the state. We have to.
Yeah. An extra 15,000 to get 82 million or something, right? I guess is probably what Metropolitan. Yeah. Yeah. If they had made that decision earlier, then it could have been built.
You can imagine what Trump would say about that.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah.
Moving into our capital program account. So we maintain an account that we pay all of our bills out of. Metropolitan funds this account. So on the far right-hand side, you can see.
Should we go back?
Oh, yeah.
Have we already done this work, this additional environmental work?
It's underway now. Yeah.
Does anybody ever question that and ask, is that necessary? Because we already have a state report, or do we just do it?
No, yeah, Metropolitan worked together with the Bureau of Reclamation on what the requirements would be in order to get their grant
Does
funding.
anybody ever appeal it? I'm trying to say we already, I doubt it.
Yeah, I mean, that would be Metropolitan.
You know, if we already have a state report and we're doing the redundancy, it'd be interesting to know if anybody's done anything to try to mitigate that.
Yeah, I know to pin down the scope of work, they had numerous, probably 4 or 5 meetings with a representative from the Bureau of Reclamation on.
Well, I understand, but if you don't, try to mitigate it, it's not gonna happen.
Mm.
And maybe it's happened, but I bet it hasn't.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't know.
Yeah.
So on this table here on the far right-hand column is the deposits that Metropolitan has made to the project. So we recently got a payment last week for $1.6 million. That brings our total to $107,560,000 that they've deposited. We have a current balance in the account of about $5.4 million as of today. No outstanding invoices at this point in time to Metropolitan.
Okay, is there any questions?
We got a couple more slides and a photo and we'll be wrapped up. I'll speed through it. As far as construction goes, the only project really going is the drilling package. Pretty much everything is done. My chart here is all green. The last remaining thing is the constant rate pumping test of the final well under drilling package number 3. So that should be occurring this week. Here's a photo of the stop log modifications. Contrary to operator Josh Ball, Pete's actually shorter than he looks in this picture. The stop logs are about 13 feet tall, but that's been completed. So they had to weld 2 pieces together, add an extension in the middle that you can see most clearly in the photo on the right, and add that rack. So it's a pretty substantial structure out there, but that's, been completed. They actually completed all the work last Thursday. So we'll probably have one more payment to them for the remaining balance of their contract. But that all went really good. Nicholas did a great job.
We're going to great lengths to avoid the metric system measuring in Josh's.
Final thing, just a couple minor things. I think the board is aware of these, but we just discussed the environmental work that's ongoing. We talked a little bit about the bond issue and the agreement related to the financing authority. So we already kind of touched on the first 2 there. The last item here is a dedication plaque. So we've been working on getting language to do a dedication plaque similar to what we've done at the treatment facilities over the years. So we'll be working towards that, getting the appropriate language and seeing if Metropolitan wants to be a part of that. And that brings us to the final slide of this presentation. We're ready to move on to the next one, which is the amendment on the board agenda for tonight, which would be an action item for an amendment for field oversight. So if there aren't any questions on the monthly report, Director Dias, you're ready to move forward, we can move on to the next item.
Yes, our committee also reviewed and recommend board approval of item 8D2, consideration and possible action on amendment to Stantec's engineering, design, and hydrogeology contract for extended well drilling oversight for 2 additional drilling package number 3 wells in the not to exceed amount of $117,455. And Justin, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. So just getting a little background, I think we're all aware, but back in January, the board authorized a change order with Bakersfield Well and Hunt to add 2 additional wells to drilling package number 3. That was a 25% increase to the total number of wells, roughly 24% increase to the construction price, and about 26% increase to the overall construction schedule. At that time, Stantec provided an amendment proposal to cover additional field services associated with that 25% increase in work. But at that time, we wanted to hold off because it looked like things were tracking under budget. So we held off at that point in time. That initial amendment was about $162,000. Since that time, expenses have tracked under budget on the drilling of the original wells under that contract. And so after seeing how that was tracking and now getting closer to the end, we have a better understanding of what an amendment might actually need to be. So we worked together with Stantec and we were able to reduce that fee down to about $117,455. That represents about 11% increase on the field oversight contract versus the 25% increase in the actual work that was added. So they've done a good job of keeping their expenses low in the field, and that goes together with the contractor doing a great job of being, efficient on the job as well. So that being said, the High Desert Water Bank Committee and staff will recommend that the board authorize an amendment with Stantec for that additional field services in the not to exceed amount of $117,455. Happy to answer any questions.
Is there any questions from the board or comments? Just a comment, if we're always under budget, somebody's probably not doing something correct in the original budgets. So I'm not sure how that's arrived, but that doesn't speak, well, in my estimation. And for the last several years, we've done amendment after amendment after amendment. We don't see other bids, but I think where we're at now, I'll support this, but it makes sense, but it shouldn't go on forever like this.
Okay.
Mr. President, this is Keith. I'll make a motion. We approve Board Order 8D2.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Dias. Do we have a second? Second, Director Van Dam. Madam Secretary, if there's no further questions or comments. Madam Secretary?
Sorry.
Director Miller?
Question for Justin, but it's not pertinent to the motion. So can I still ask the question?
Okay, we'll gonna do this vote?
Let's do the vote and then I can ask.
Okay, Madam Secretary?
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Jay Tremblay,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Thank you, motion carried. Thank you, Justin. Yeah, Director Miller?
Was there any kind of update on the Southern California Edison status? Are we still at least a year out on electricity?
Yeah, their schedule has not slipped at all, so they're still on track for kind of mid 2026-ish timeframe. I do know that they're working through the property rights right now, so they're working on reaching out and starting to work through the few. There's probably about half of the parcels that they're crossing that they're going to need easements or something on. So they're starting to get their property group involved in reaching out to those people to start acquiring that right away.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yep. Mhm.
Any other questions?
Well, I have a question on that. But it's way back there on the change order. There was a change order for $2.25 million.
Huh?
I mean, I guess that was a long time ago, but what was that on? That
So-
seems like a lot of money, that's all.
Yeah, I think you're referring to this slide here, right?
Yeah, it was
So-
drilling package, reconstruction.
Yeah, so we added 2 additional wells to this current contract. So the contractor was doing a really good job in the field. We thought they were making great progress. The wells that they've done for us in the past turned out really good.
Mhm.
And so we had an opportunity to add 2 additional wells to that construction contract, keep the momentum going with that drilling contractor, and get those 2 wells done at a price that we thought was a really good price relative to bids that we had received in the past.
No,
Yeah.
it must be pretty big wells at $1.25 million each or something.
Yeah, they're
Or-
100 feet deep and 18-inch diameter. So they're big wells. Yeah.
I was just curious on, it seemed like a big change order, that's all.
Yeah.
Just eventually when this thing's operational, how much will we be able to pump a day or a month from all these wells?
So,
You don't have to
it's
answer.
looking like is that the initial outset, we're probably going to be able to pump upwards of 90,000 acre feet in a year, which just exceeds beyond the project goals. But that will decline if we continue to pump year over year over
Okay,
year.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any further questions or
I
comments?
had one more question. How many wells will we run? It's gonna be a total of 29 wells,
27.
27.
Yeah.
And at one given time, how many wells will we be pumping from?
Probably all of them. If they're calling for 70,000 acre feet in a year, we'll probably be pumping all 27.
That's Drain the whole valley, won't it?
Don't forget to leave 10% behind.
Yeah.
Okay. You see if we can go down.
Thank you.
Thanks, Justin, good job.
That water's gonna be like, horses are gonna be all over the valley. We'll see if it's there. Okay,
That concludes our report, Mr.
Yeah,
President.
thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dias. We'll move on to item number 9, General Manager's Report.
All right, thank you, President Lane. So pretty brief report tonight. I gave a whole water supply update a couple weeks ago, so we'll do that at the next meeting. We did have a call today with DWR regarding allocation update. I mentioned there was a kind of a hint of another increase in the allocation, but right now it doesn't look like it. So the studies that they presented show that we're probably gonna hold at 50% for now. So here's a couple pictures John took of our new admin chiller being installed that the board approved several months back. Here's another picture of it being installed, sitting on the pad. So guys are working hard there, just watching it trying to fall into place. Also, if you remember, the board approved a small contract to recoat the various chemical storage tanks here at the Court Sale Water Treatment Plant. So they're making progress on that. These tanks at Court Sale should be done next week or two. And then they're going to move over to the East Side Water Treatment Plant where they're recoating a couple of those chemical storage tanks as well. Just an update on our budget schedule. You know, we got through the Personnel Committee meeting last week, so we're slowly checking off the items. We previously approved the membership list. Next week or two, we're going to present or go through the capital improvement budget and the information technology budget with the various committees. And then we got a few more items to present in June, with hopes of approving our budget sometime in July when we get all the information from DWR on our statement of charges for the year. So everything's fallen in place there. Upcoming meetings, we obviously have the Water Master meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. here at AVAC, or also on Zoom. The Antelope Valley State Water Contractors Association is having a tour for the staff members of the various legislators. So the legislators themselves won't be on that tour, but a few of their staff members will be. And that's scheduled for this Thursday from 9 to 3:30. And they're going to tour Palmdale Water District facilities, a quick tour of Low Rock Creek Irrigation District's recharge project along the Low Rock Creek, and then AVAC's facilities. The Antelope Valley State Water Contractors Association also has a meeting scheduled for June 12th at 6 p.m. And if you didn't see the notice, the Special Districts Association of Northern LA County has a meeting scheduled for the 18th of June. It's in Palmdale at the IBEW building. If you do want to go to that event, get with Holly and she'll RSVP for you. And then if you haven't seen your email yet, we do have Congressman Whiteside scheduled to come on Tuesday, July 1st at 11:30 a.m. for a briefing with AVAC. And it sounds like we have more than a quorum of the board, so that will be a special board meeting on that date. And that's all I have to report, unless you have any questions.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Matt. You have some questions here?
Just a question, do you know what time their State Water Contractor Association tour will be here? And is that something that?
Do you remember what time it's gonna be at AVAC?
I think it's around noon.
Around noon. So if you wanna come for that portion, you're more than welcome. Is that your plan?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what was I was asking.
All
Thank
right,
you.
good.
Matt, I had a question. How much water are we stored right now in the San Luis Reservoir?
Our plan shows at the end of 2025, if everything, our demands work out and what we've already scheduled for banking, we will have about 36,000, 37,000 acre
That's
feet.
full. That's our maximum capacity, isn't it?
That's our contracted storage volume.
Okay. We
About
lose
30.
it. We lose it after that.
We don't lose it unless it spills. So we could carry that over into 2026.
Okay.
And that volume that I mentioned to you, that's based on the 50% allocation. And that's assuming that we're banking the amount that's already approved by the board and our customers use the amount that we're estimating.
Right. So if we did get a bump up in this allocation, would we lose some of that water then?
No, we wouldn't lose it. We would have to figure out we could overstore, or we could bank it, decide to just deliver it here to bank, or we could sell it to another state water contractor, or do a swap of table A for groundwater.
When you say overstore, explain that.
Well, I want to screw it up. I'm going to lean on Peter to explain that. He's kind of the expert in that.
All right. Thank you, Holly. So we have a contracted right to store around 36,000 acre feet in San Luis. If there's space available, any contractor can store more than their contracted amount, but anything that's overstored will be the first thing that spills when San Luis spills. So it's water that would be at more risk of spill than just the water in our contracted right. Does that help, Gary?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So it's pretty safe to store up to the 36,000.
But we've lost water before,
We have.
We have.
and we were under our 36,000, right?
Correct.
So it's pretty safe, but not completely safe.
Exactly.
And how quickly can we get water out of San Luis if we believe a spill is going to take place?
I mean, if we needed to evacuate it, we stay in close contact with DWR, and they notify us if a spill is coming. So we're going to have some advance notice, and we could probably move 250 plus acre feet a day. That's without the High Desert Water Bank. So if High Desert Water Bank was available, we could probably move 500 acre feet a day.
So I've never heard 30, I've known what our capacity is, but I've never heard we've stored this much in a year. Is this normal, or when was the last time we stored 36,000 acre feet?
Well, before AVAC had banking projects, we used to store huge volumes because that's the only storage we had.
Right.
We either, whatever excess table A we had that customers didn't use was stored in San Luis. But it's been, I can't remember last year that we actually lost water due to spill. I think AVAC's done a pretty good job in recent years of managing that risk of spill because of the banking projects.
Right.
Because we can move it out and move it to storage if it's a risk of spill. But, our philosophy staff is to ensure that we are keeping some reserve in San Luis so that we have wet water in the canal in the event the next year is dry. If you look fast forward, if 2026 was extremely dry and the allocation is low, we're going to rely on that stored water in San Luis to meet our demands of our customers.
And then if it's a dry year, very little likelihood of a spill.
Correct.
And in a wet year, if it's wet, then we're okay if there's a spill.
Yeah, we're okay because typically the allocation's higher.
Higher.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll get the Arctic 21 water.
Yeah.
All kinds. Okay.
So storing in San Luis is kind of an insurance policy for AVAC to meet our demands.
Good.
Until we have, until we make investments locally to have sufficient pump back to the aqueduct or, like SNP phase 2 completed and additional recovery capacity, we need a block of water in the canal to treat at our facilities.
Good.
Thank you.
Hey,
Yep.
Yeah, Matt, is there anything further?
That's all I have unless you have any.
Yeah, thank you much. There's no other comments, questions. Okay, we'll move down to director's reports. We'll move down to attorney's reports. Okay. Request for future agenda items.
Mr. President, I have one.
Director Ferris.
I would recommend that we do an AB 1234 training. It's our ethics training with our attorney. I have not had that for a while, and Jay is new on the board, and I think after the last 4 or 5 months of different meetings and things, that it would be a good special meeting for us to have that training so we can interact with each other and talk about it and ask questions of our attorney and have Jay involved.
It never hurts. So they, we probably deal with management and when they.
Yeah,
can be-
I'd recommend we do a special meeting so we all can attend together.
Usually, in Rome, we have they have to be taken every, what is it?
2 years, 2 years. Every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
So everybody's on a different schedule. Some people already just did
And
it
so,
online.
as far as having that, everybody needs to be there. I don't agree with that, but we do need to meet a requirement. And if somebody, wants to go, we should do it, and especially we're a new board member.
Do we have a list, Holly, of who's headed and who hasn't?
Yes, I do keep that. And sometimes the AV State Water Contractors will host that because we get them from LCID, we get them from PWD and from us. So
Understood.
yeah.
Can we get a copy of that list of where we're all at?
Yes,
And then maybe look at, again, George, my recommendation would be doing a special meeting so we all can attend, so we all would hear the same thing.
Well, I think whoever would like to attend,
Our attorney.
you have to be within the 2 years.
yes.
And if there's more than 3 of us that are going to attend, then we would need to have a special
Definitely,
meeting, right?
I think that we need it.
It's.
I don't know if we need it for that. Do we,
Never been like that.
do our legal counsel, for training, do we need there's more than 3 members, do we need is that a meeting or not?
Not a meeting,
Yeah.
not to take the course.
So we could just have,
Something much more entertaining.
I know I can find
Okay.
it from last year.
Yeah.
Come in, Audrey, it won't be like anyone.
It'll be fun.
So it can be made available, Rob, and we'll deal with our
Yep.
staff.
Yeah, most people have been just taking it online.
Yeah.
When I tell them their time is up,
Yeah,
so, but if you want to have it in person, we can reach out to the AV State
well,
Water
in the past,
Contractors.
we've done it online, it's worked out.
Mhm.
Everybody has different schedules.
again, my recommendation is that our attorney provide one for us. I think it'd be helpful for all of us to hear what our
Well,
attorney has.
that's your idea, Rob, so maybe,
Yeah, that's why I'm asking for it to be an
Yeah.
agenda item so we can talk about it. I'm
no,
not,
it can be an agenda.
I'm not.
So I put it on the agenda items.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking
Yeah,
for.
okay.
Let's put it on the agenda item. Then we can see who's gonna need it. We can have a discussion about it
Fine.
among ourselves. And if the consensus is, we don't need one for all of us, good. If we should just have one where we all can attend.
That's fine, we have a system right now, it's gonna be taken every 2 years, but that's fine to talk about.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So if
Yep.
we can put that on the agenda, that'd be great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to, we need to go into closed session regarding CV communities.
We do.
Okay, we have a motion to go into closed session.
I'll move to go to closed session.
Motion by Director Miller,
I'll second.
Director Mercy, a second. Madam Secretary?
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Jay Tremblay,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Okay, motion carried. Let's take 5 minutes and, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.